Welcome to the Boxing Source Midweek Report, where we tackle the latest topics in the sport of boxing here up to this point every single Wednesday. Time to start the show. Yo, greetings, everybody. What's going on? What's going on? We are here for the Midweek Report for January 28th, 2026. What's going on, everybody? Yeah, we are here. We are live. Whether it's YouTube or Rumble, we are live. Okay, we are live in full effect and everything like that. So, what we're going to do is we have a packed show here for this edition of the Midweek Report. I mean, we got fights that's going on January 30th, January 31st, whole slew of fights for people to be able to enjoy here as a fight fan. And I mean, I'm talking about this like this may be the biggest fight weekend of 2026. And, we ain't even pretty much a month through. We're going to have fights on Friday. We're going to have fights on Saturday. And we're going to have fights on Sunday. Yeah, that's right. We're going to be having fights on Sunday as well. So we're going to, try to go through as much of this as possible, right? Because you got a number of title fights that's going to be taking place on January 31st there. So we're going to be taking a look at that. We got the thing there for what's going on for ProBox TV. You know what I mean? So we got all of that going on here at this moment. So what we're going to do is we're going to, kind of, go through a few things here on this edition. So if you can, what we're going to do is just try to get a couple of things going here in just a second. So hold on just a moment here, real quick. All right. So we should be in full effect here for the midweek report, man. Because what I want to do is I want to go through a number of these things here with the fight cards, right? We know that we got what's going on in Madison Square Garden. We know what's going down when it comes to the fights in Newcastle and in the United Kingdom. And yet we do have the top ranked fights that's going to be taking place in Puerto Rico. So this is going to be a lot to kind of like cover here in this edition, right? Going to see here if I was going to be able to share the fight schedule here, but we got, what's coming up first that we're going to talk about is the fights at Madison Square Garden. So I want to see if I could go ahead and post the fight schedule for that here. All right. So we're going to, try to get that here, get that done. So let's see here what we got for this. Hopefully we got the right joint on here. No, that's not the one that I want to post. This is the one that I want to post. This is the one that I want to post right here. Yeah. All right. There it is. And here it goes. Right. So what we got here on slate is you got Teofimo Lopez versus Shakur Stevenson for the WBO and Ring Magazine Super Lightweight Championships. You got Carlos Adames versus Austin Ammo Williams for the WBC Middleweight Championship. You got Bruce Carrington versus Carlos Castro for the WBC Featherweight Championship. And you got Keyshawn Davis versus Jermaine Ortiz there in a WBO eliminator bout for the super lightweight division. So, I mean, we're going to see here, have this thing as far as like what's happening or what's going down. I mean, you kind of like see the full schedule there, but you know what we got here? Yeah, Ring 6, Madison Square Garden, Teo versus Shakur, Keyshawn versus Jermaine Ortiz, Bruce Carrington versus Carlos Castro. You also have there with Carlos Adames versus Ammo Williams, as I mentioned. You got Jarrell Big Baby Miller against Kingsley Abbey. You got Ziad Almayu versus Kevin Castillo as part of this fight card. So, I mean, we got a number of things here that we're going to be looking at for this upcoming bout, right? So, with that being said, I wanted to see also we, go through the odds and things like that for these particular fights, right? Going to this main event, you're going to have there with Shakur Stevenson and with Teofimo Lopez as Shakur Stevenson aims to go for a title in a fourth division. As I mentioned there, you got him that was the WBO champion at featherweight. He was the WBO and WBC champion there at super featherweight and became the WBC champion at lightweight before making this attempt here for going at after the WBO and Ring Magazine Super Lightweight Championships here against Teofimo Lopez, right? So, I mean, now I kind of like seeing this thing as far as like what I would say the odds have pretty much like been in favor of Shakur Stevenson, consistently throughout. They got him like around a what I say 3-1, yeah, about a 3-1 favorite, and they got they got uh Teofimo here at what two, pretty much like 2.5. I would say 2.5 to one underdog. You would think with being the defending champion, having 4 defenses of that title there, and going up against a fighter that's coming up to your division for his first fight, you would think that the odds would kind of like be flipped. That it should be Teofimo Lopez as a 3-1 favorite. But yeah, right now it's like they kind of like feeling like it's Shakur Stevenson with his overall skill level. And I think the style is to where they kind of lean towards Shakur Stevenson being more of a guy that could be comfortable in what he does in comparison to Teofimo Lopez and what he's used to doing. You now I was saying that Teofimo Lopez having his fights against the likes of Sandro Martin, against the likes of Jermaine Ortiz, who's going to be on this card. We had the Steve Claggett fight, right? You also had Arnold Barbosa Jr., which at the time was Teal's mandatory challenger for the WBO title. But what we've seen here, at least so far in the super lightweight division for Teofimo Lopez, is not necessarily the guy that fight fans kind of gravitated towards or what they knew him for. He was having those knockout wins, while he was at 135, in order to get up to the point where he did face Vasily Lomachenko. I remember he had that second round TKO over Richard Comey, when he become a world champion, and then unified against Vasily Lomachenko, right? So that was where he got his like overall popularity level and where he was at, the peak as far as like his overall rating is concerned. But then he turned around and then had a bout against George Kambosos Jr. and ended up losing that bout to George Kambosos Jr. by decision. Now he was able to, recover from that, got that win over Josh Taylor to become the Ring Magazine and Lineal WBO champion there at super lightweight, and has made those defenses. But it's, as I said, it's not like how he was kind of like making his name at 135 pounds when he was getting those stoppage victories before, becoming a unified champion at 135. So now it's like, okay, what version of Teofimo Lopez is going to be present on January 31st here against Shakur Stevenson? The thing with Shakur Stevenson is he's there undefeated, as I said, multi-division world champion, 24-0 there. Yeah, he has 11 wins by way of knockout, but he's there as a southpaw, one of the highly rated fighters when it comes to pound for pound. So he's been able to be comfortable in pretty much like every single fight that he's had. I can't really recall something where he was, very uncomfortable in about. Yeah, even with the whole thing about the Edwin De Los Santos bout, him like dealing with the injury and things like that, it's still, at least to me, he wasn't like uncomfortable or out of his element. De Los Santos didn't really press action enough for him to really get Shakur Stevenson to, do something different, you know. And for me, outside of, his bout against Josh Padley where he was able to get a stoppage victory, yeah, but then after that against William Zepeda last year, that was probably one of his best performances that he's had in, his entire career, right? But for me, I felt like that is kind of like a style that maybe like was a little bit similar to like when Shakur fought Oscar Valdez and nullified Oscar Valdez for the majority of that bout before kind of like cruising to the decision win to become the unified champion at 130 pounds, right? So here with Teofimo Lopez, of course, is the guy that's supposed to be posed as the larger guy or the bigger guy and everything like that. He's supposed to be the one that should be the established fighter there at 140 pounds. But it's like the way that he fights or his fighting style is more of like a boxing, counter punch type of style. Quick twitch, move, kind of like movement here and there. It's almost like, I hate to say it, but it's almost as like Shakur Stevenson when it comes to offensive output. Because for him, he's more of like a counterpunch type of fighter, or he kind of like relies on his speed and power to overwhelm his opponents. You kind of seen that in his tenure at 135 pounds, particularly against like guys like Vasyl Lomachenko or something like that. But while he's been at 140, he hasn't necessarily been able to do that. If I'm not mistaken, up to this point for Teofimo Lopez, ever since he has been in the 140-pound division, he has only had one win by stoppage, and that was the first bout that he had in the division against Pedro Campo, and that was back in 2022. But in his fights since, 5 fights, he hasn't had any stoppage wins. And man, I'm thinking about it. Yeah, I don't think he's even scored one knockdown. I don't think he scored one knockdown there. So I'm like, how is he going to be able to maneuver around someone like Shakur Stevenson, who's always comfortable, always within his stance, is able to like figure out, okay, you're in this position in the ring. You know what? I know if you're going to be moving this way, I'm going to move. I'm going to move like, hey, if you move forward, I'm going to move off to the side. If you, try to cut me off, I'm going to still give a half step back and try to counter you. You know what I mean? Of course, I'm like in a wrong stance here if I'm Shakur because he is a southpaw. So this would be his power hand there, the left hand. So he would be able to make those, decisions to where he would position himself at the right spot to get the better of his opponent. That's the thing about Shakur Stevenson. A lot of people talk about the whole thing as far as like his plus minus connect percentage in comparison to their opponent's connect percentage. Okay. What they saw or what people saw in this bout against William Zepeda was probably, as it was mentioned, like the best performance kind of like style wise, because while he was like standing in the pocket and there were times that he did back up, he was still like tagging and properly, hitting William Zepeda to the point where, at least me watching live, I thought by about the 5th or the 6th round, he could have been able to, stop William Zepeda. But didn't necessarily work out that way. So ended up being a wide decision win in favor of Shakur Stevenson in that part. Now he's going up against Teofimo Lopez, and he's looking to kind of like do the same thing. I know he said multiple times over these, press conferences and these conversations and these face-offs that, he's going to be like a different fighter than he was against William Zepeda. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's still Shakur Stevenson. We haven't necessarily seen him be kind of like different than he had been in any of his fights. It's more about what Teofimo Lopez could do to get him out of his comfort zone. And with Teofimo, like, what is it? Like, he's had bouts against Jermaine Ortiz, as I mentioned, Sandor Martin, Steve Claggett, Arnold Barboza. Like, the Barboza fight, like, he had that good start, but, for Barboza on pretty much on his end, he really didn't kind of like, force the action enough to make Teofimo Lopez do much of anything different. So on his part, he really didn't have to do much to be out of his comfort zone in that front. But you kind of like seen there in that Barbosa fight that he didn't kind of like step things up to where it's like, okay, he was saying, remember at the time during that fight at Times Square, that he was interested in fights against like Devin Haney or Jerome Boots Ennis or something like that. And you have a performance like that, why would anyone kind of think that he would pose any threat to either one of those guys? At least for me, right? But there, you kind of like seeing that he wanted to have the big fights at that time after, defeating Arnold Barbosa. At the time, it was his mandatory challenger for the WBO belt. But it took until now, for Teofimo Lopez to get a bout of any sort. No unification, no bout against a top or highly rated fighter within the 140-pound division, but it is against a fighter that is rated by many to be among the top 10 in the pound for pound rankings. So at least he has that here that's right in front of him. On my part, I kind of like have the thing there with Shakur Stevenson being among the top 10 in the pound for pound rankings. I got, Teofimo there around number 11. I could share that here real quick, right? So, I had the thing there in reference to the pound for pound rankings. I had like updated them, from the beginning of this month here, of course, with the fights that happened with Inoue and Bam Rodriguez and Junso Nagatani and all of that was happening over the past couple of months. So, I do have there, as you see, Shakur Stevenson rated at number 7. I got Teofimo Lopez there currently rated at number 11. So, you kind of like see, right there that, hold on a second. Let me try to get this thing over here, so to speak. I'm able to do it. Hold on. Let's see what I got. This thing is supposed to do it here real quick, but not quite working real there on that front. So hold on. I'm gonna try to see here if I could do that or probably like redo it and see what happens there. But all right. Once I try to, get that sorted, like I was talking about, you had Shakur Stevenson, at least in the boxing stores pound for pound rankings, they're rated at number 7. And you got Teofimo Lopez rated at number 11. So, with that, you would kind of like to say that, the winner here would kind of make their case to be around that top 6 or 7 or whatever it is. You got Devin Haney. I got Devin Haney there at number 5. I got I got Devin Haney at number 6, David Benavidez at number 5, Dimitri Bivol at number 4. I don't know. I might have to do something about Dimitri Bivol because I don't know when he's going to be back in the ring. I got Bam Rodriguez at number 3, Naoya Inoue at number 2, and Alexander Usyk currently at number 1. My guy G5 Jeff in the building there saying, yeah, this big weekend coming up there. Yo, we good. We getting it. All right. So that's the thing there that we got going on so far. I'm gonna see here if I could try something out here. So what I'll do is I'll see if we could do a quick break here, and then we will be right back. Hold on just a moment. All right, we should be back here live on the Midweek Report. Okay, I am going to see here. Everything should be kind of straight here. Let me try to, do something here real quick because we had a couple of things going on with the back end. All right, so we should have this here. All right, cool. This is what we got. All right, you see now you see the whole thing there with the pound for pound rankings there that we got the boxing sorts pound for pound top 16 there. Okay, so you kind of like see all of that. we're going to have a couple of matchups, like I said, that's going to deal with fighters that are within this top 16 here. We got, of course, what they're setting up for Nairo Inoue versus Junto Nakatani. Uh, we got, as I mentioned, there's Shakur Stevenson versus Teofimo Lopez. You're also going to have Emmanuel Navarrete involved in a big bout within his division coming up next month. You got Zerto Ramirez slated to go up against David Benavidez in May. So we got a lot of fights that are going to be dealing with a number of these fighters here within the top 16. But I did mention a thing there with Dimitri Bivol. But we also have something there with Canelo Alvarez and Tank Davis that's on this edition of the pound for pound top 16. But once we get done with this month, you're gonna see a good number of shifting going around there with the pound for pound top 16. All right, so you do have that's going on there. But like I was mentioning there with Teofimo Lopez and Shakur Stevenson, that is going to be there. Oh boy. Uh, I did see something there. I know G5 Jeff is in the building there. I kind of seen something on one of the chats there, group chats or whatever it is. So some news that kind of deals with boxing, but it's mainly outside of boxing. Pretty much is kind of like happened here recently. So yeah, that's the thing about it. Shout out to WYD say they're in the building. He says, "Who do you think will win, Xander or Baraou?" That is going to be a really, really good fight. I'm going to get to that here in a minute. Because I don't know what it was, but this thing was kind of like tripping earlier. But I'm currently talking about this thing here with what's going on at Madison Square Garden on Saturday night. You got that main event there, Teofimo Lopez versus Shakur Stevenson. You got Keyshawn Davis versus Jermaine Ortiz. You got Bruce Carrington versus Carlos Castro. You got the WBC middleweight title there. You got Carlos Adames there going up against Austin Ammo Williams. So a lot of fights there on that particular card itself. And then, as you mentioned there, with the unification bout of 154 pounds in Puerto Rico, Xander Zayas versus Abbas Baraou, there for the WBA and WBO titles at 154 pounds. Now, with this here, the main event, I am leaning towards Shakur Stevenson, for the win. It would have to be something to where Tio is having a performance that we have not seen from Teofimo Lopez. I don't know, maybe since I wouldn't even necessarily say against Josh Taylor, because the thing with Josh Taylor was, the situation with him, the fight before that, he was there against Jack Catterall. At the time, he was an undisputed champion. You had that decision there. I felt like Jack Catterall cooked him. And then after that, he didn't have the immediate rematch. And by the time he ended up facing Teofimo Lopez, all of the other titles were vacated. And at the time when, Taylor was at his highest point, right? Some were even considering that he would move up from 140 to 147. So it looked like he was kind of like teetering in between that, but he didn't eventually go up. Ended up having a fight against Teofimo Lopez, had the performance that he did, and then ever since that, he kind of like went down basically, and he's retired now, right? So I got to see if Teofimo Lopez is going to be able to step up here and have the performance of, I don't know, man. They probably have a performance of a lifetime there on that front. And then, you seen the back and forth in a press conference between Teo Sr. and Shakur Stevenson. So I would like to see what Teofimo Lopez Sr. has in store in the corner for his son, Teofimo Lopez, there in this upcoming bout. You got that co-feature bout there, Keyshawn Davis versus Jermaine Ortiz within the 140-pound division. Yet another fight where one of the combatants in this is going to be at 140 for his first time in his career. This is the former WBO champion at 135 pounds in Keyshawn Davis. Of course, last year was able to win over Dennis Berincic to become the WBO lightweight champion. Was supposed to have that defense against Edwin De Los Santos. It didn't happen. So he hasn't had a fight since February 14th of last year at the theater at Madison Square Garden. You know what I mean? Shout out to Bull Rider Game Funk. Nah, he got, come on, man. He got to, man. I'm telling you this right here. That will probably be the biggest story going into Saturday if Keyshawn didn't make weight. I'm telling you, because of course that was like one of the biggest stories about, the whole thing that happened over in Norfolk, because he was supposed to be having that fight there against Edwin De Los Santos, right? And then going into that whole thing, fight week, you had all of the events going on with the Davis brothers and everything like that. Then you had the press conference. You had Kelvin Davis there against Nahir Albright as one of the fights. You had Keon Davis there that was featured on the card, and then you had Keyshawn that was talking, and then you go to the whole thing with the weigh-in, and then in the weigh-in he shows up 4 pounds overweight, and of course like the media folks around there went crazy, you know what I mean? And then going to what was happening, people talking, they were talking with the promoters there and stuff like that, Samson Lukowitz, to talk about Edwin De Los Santos and all of that. We didn't know until like a couple hours later that the fight wasn't going to happen. And then later on, we find out that, it was Samson Lukowitz that was the one that said, no, we ain't doing it. And it was crazy, so now we get to see, what's going to be going on here with Keyshawn Davis here for this upcoming bout. He's talked a lot. He's been on a number of shows. He's been on a number of podcasts here, talking about what's going on. We had that story there where he said that he's going to be pretty much like in-house with his preparations for his upcoming fights, starting with this one. And, now he's going to have, the spotlight on him, here from this point forward, because we got to see, where he's going to be at this juncture of his career. He feels like he's going to continue his career at 140 pounds. This is step one. Now, the thing about it is, it's going to be, hey, well, if you are here at 140, you're currently rated the number one in the WBO rankings at 140. This is an eliminator bout. You win this bout, and Shakur wins against Teofimo Lopez. Come on, y'all. I know what y'all saying. I know that y'all basically in camp together or whatever it is. But come on, man. Listen. He said like ain't no money in the world or whatever it is that'll have him like fight Shakur. Okay. So my thing is going to be this. If you win and Shakur wins, don't be saying that Shakur is going to end up giving up that WBO belt. Nah. Because if he ends up doing that, then hey, you might as well go ahead and fight goddamn Teofimo Lopez if you lose Shakur. But hey, we gonna see, because Jermaine Ortiz said, hey, listen. He said even though he could have a potential rematch against Teofimo Lopez, he said he would rather face Shakur Stevenson. Why? Because he said, listen, I'll be in the streak of taking fighters' O away, right? He said after he takes Keyshawn's O away, then he said he want to go ahead and take Shakur's O away. Hey, it's there, man. We seen it there on the channel. Y'all could watch the entire interview that I had there with Jermaine Ortiz. As he prepared for his bout against Keyshawn Davis. Yeah, you do have Keyshawn Davis with his channel, with his, fight camps and fight vlogs. And then you got Jermaine Ortiz with his fight vlog too. So y'all can follow both of them, as they prepare for this bout here at 140 pounds. I mean, of course, you got there with Jermaine Ortiz as the technician there. That's going to be a really interesting bout because of, like I was mentioning, Ortiz's performance against Teofimo Lopez, right? But then, you also had Jermaine Ortiz's performance against Vasily Lomachenko. Now, some may have said that he should have gotten a nod over Vasily Lomachenko, but he didn't, quite get that. And you know, they basically had it with a unanimous decision for Vasily Lomachenko, in favor of Lomachenko on that. But ever since then, you kind of like seeing him compete there at 140 pounds, as I mentioned, against Teofimo Lopez. I was able to see him in his bout against Yomar Alamo in Orlando last year. He's had 3 straight fights there in Orlando. Of course, that's there with Box Lab Promotions. There, Amari Pietro Box Lab Promotions. They pretty much like have their fights or their fight cards hosted at the Caribe Royale. So you do have there Jermaine Ortiz that's been able to get those string of wins since fighting Teofimo Lopez in 2024. So now we got to see how he goes or how we fares here against Keyshawn Davis. Of course, Keyshawn is the Olympic silver medalist and everything like that. Undefeated, 13-0 going into this bout. We got to see how it goes there on this, man. Hey, you know what it is and who it is. 4 corners in the building. What's going on? You feel me? He said, yeah, we got a lot of smoke on Saturday night. A lot. I mean, it's packed. It is packed here. Like I said, you got this, this big bout here that's going on. So I like to see, what's going to be happening there with Keyshawn Davis because like I said, we don't know what his mind frame is actually going into this bout. Yeah, I was mentioning the whole thing as far as like, hey, all right, he's got this flight vlog. He's got what's going on in camp, what's going on outside of camp. He had his reaction to Andy Cruz losing by decision to Raymond Murataya. Now he's back here within fight week. He got the whole thing set up where he's gonna have a busload of folks from Norfolk coming up there to Madison Square Garden to support and everything like that. But we got to see if he's going to be able to do this here against Jermaine Ortiz. Now, he has been he's been part of fight cards there that involve Shakur Stevenson. We had the whole thing with him against Miguel Madueno that was in Newark in 2024. Also, you had that Anthony Can You Dig It Yigit bout there at the Prudential Center in 2023. So he's kind of like had those performances where he's kind of like stepped up his game. You know what I mean? 4 corners here they said, hey, I like Jermaine Ortiz, but can he finally deliver against elite competition? This is his opportunity right here. Like you said, Keyshawn is a dog. I mean, we seen that. At least for me, I seen it in 2024. I was there, when he did face Miguel Madueno, and then the following bout where he did have the fight against Gustavo Lemos there in Norfolk, the Scope Arena, and then following that, he had the bout against Dennis Berinchik at the theater at Madison Square Garden. So he has those elements there of stepping it up or amping things up when the action picks up. Now we got to see how he does here against Jermaine Ortiz, of course, who is the technician with the nickname and stuff like that, and how he's going to be able to react to what Jermaine Ortiz's mannerisms are going to be. He talks about his movement, his speed, and that type of thing that Keyshawn has not dealt with something like that in his career up to this particular point. So we gonna see how that looks here coming up on Saturday night. Now, the thing about it is, a lot of people seem like they're doubting Jermaine Ortiz in this. When you got Keyshawn Davis there as as high as a 6.5-1 favorite in this upcoming bout. When you got Jermaine Ortiz at like a 4-1 underdog. So those are pretty sizable odds. In comparison to what you have here for that main event, Teofimo versus Shakur. You got Shakur at like a 3-1 favorite and Teo at like a 2.5 or 2-1 underdog here. But Keyshawn at 13-0. First bout at 140 pounds. First bout since, as I mentioned there, February 14th of last year. Going up against Jermaine Ortiz, who has been, fairly active, had a couple of fights there last year. But they're saying like he's not going to be able to, I guess, take it to another level against a Keyshawn Davis. We shall see on that one because I think it's going to be a really interesting bout there for both fighters. Like you said, he has to, Ortiz has to deliver against elite competition. This is like his next opportunity where he could potentially fight for a world title. He did mention, like, last year after his win against Omar Alamo, it was saying like they were kind of, build him up there in the WBA rankings. So he wanted to see if he could get in a fight against Gary Antoine Russell at the time. Now he's in this position. He's getting his bout against Keyshawn Davis, and it's a WBO eliminator bout, so now he's like, hey, I'll be right there next in line for the WBO title. You know what I mean? Uh, Bull Rider says that Keyshawn Davis is a clinch monster. Hope the ref calls him out on it. Depends on who the ref is. I don't know if it's going to be a Thomas Taylor or a Dave Chappelle. I mean, not Dave Chappelle, man. I keep calling that guy Dave Chappelle, man. Harvey Dock. Now, the thing about it is, Harvey Dock was the referee for Keyshawn's last fight against Dennis Berinchik. So, I don't know. You might see one of those two as the referee for that upcoming bout. It said Teofimo is a plus 230. Yeah, that's pretty much around that range, a plus 230. That was on FanDuel. I think I've seen that on like FanDuel. They got it plus 230. On Caesar Sportsbook, they had them at like plus 265. And BetMGM had them at like plus 260. So, and it's like, I don't know, man. Some people are putting money towards TO, on some books, and others are putting money towards Shakur. You know what I mean? So we got to see how that is. Or he says also that likes how Carrington wasn't elevated to full champ like all the others, and he has to fight for the title. They had, the thing is, they had something scheduled for him, so they're like, you know what? Since they got this thing, locked in or scheduled, then might as well just have them, fight for it and all of that. Because, outside of that, they ain't gonna necessarily just elevate them like that. You feel me? As far as like the other guys that have been like interim champions that, kind of like was up to world champions, I'm gonna see if I should be able to have something slated for one of those guys that was elevated to full champion here pretty soon. So we're gonna be talking about that. But yeah, you got that whole thing there with Bruce Carrington and Carlos Castro. You had Carlos Castro who had the the bout against Stephen Fulton, right? And he had Stephen Fulton there with the knockdown, but he ended up losing by split decision. He hasn't had a bout since then, and now he's in this mix here to fight for the WBC featherweight championship against Bruce Carrington. They're at 16-0. Of course, had this whole thing with the WBC interim bout against Mateus Hida last year in New York City. As they say, Shoe York City and whatever it is. So he was able to get the decision win on that day to become the interim champion. Now, at the time, he was looking for all the smoke there at 126, but, he said multiple times. And there's been other people within the industry that have said that these guys aren't willing to fight Bruce Carrington. So you got other world champions that are out there, but they just didn't want to have a bout there with Bruce Carrington. So, that's how I guess, you eventually had the bout against Mateus Hida that took place at Madison Square Garden. And then now he's in this position to, fight for the world title there, WBC world title. Of course, as, Stephen Fulton had been the WBC champion, but went up against O'Shaquie Foster. And we all saw what happened right there. You know what I mean? It says that everyone should fight for the titles and not be elevated. Hey, I think, we should, here's my thing. We got to cut down on these interim titles. Like, if you have an instance, right, where the full champion is not able to fight the top rated contender or the mandatory challenger, either they're gonna have to give it up or like be the champion in recess as someone that I didn't kind of like mention that has where we just had updated news about a certain fighter that had been named the champion in recess. But yeah, I just don't like the whole thing with this interim championship and all that type of stuff. You have it with like the WBO in some weight classes, you have it with the WBC in some weight classes, right? But if these guys that hold the world title, the full title, aren't necessarily going to be fighting these interim champions or whatever these interim champions are anytime soon, then you might as well just pack it up. You know what I mean? So, I mean, yeah, you want to be able to fight for the titles, but at the same time, it's like, hey, if the full world champions aren't available for them, then what are they going to do? And remember, this is still the sanctioning bodies at the end of the day. So they, if they gotta wait for the full world champion to to fight, then what are they gonna do for getting a percentage of fighters? You know what? I ain't even gonna get into all of that because y'all know I do have conversations with a number of folks that are in these sanctioning bodies. But y'all see what goes on, and y'all see what goes down. You know what I mean? But yeah, this thing here with Bruce Carrington, Carlos Castro, this is going to be something there. A lot of people are leaning towards Bruce Carrington for getting this win. We got to see what happens with him after this. They got him as high as like a 10-1 favorite against Carlos Castro, which makes a lot of sense. As I mentioned, Castro hasn't fought since the bout against Stephen Fulton in 2024. And now he is right back in the mix against Bruce Carrington with that world title on the line. So it's going to be a really, I'd say, a real task for Carlos Castro in this front. Especially with Carrington. He's been waiting for this opportunity to fight for a world title for at least a couple of years. You know what I mean? So him getting this opportunity is going to be really good. And if he's able to get this win, especially if he gets it by stoppage, then that'll be a really big moment there for Bruce Carrington to win the WBC featherweight championship there in that type of fashion. But that kind of like is what we got there so far. Of course, you got Carlos Adames versus Emma Williams for the WBC middleweight championship. Emma Williams had got a string of wins since his loss. There's some time back in that Queensbury versus Matchroom 5v5, right? And I seen him in Orlando, Florida, when he had that win there within that fight. I mean, that was what the main event there against Patrice Volney. So he's kind of got himself back in the mix there in the middleweight division. But now he's put in this position to face a Carlos Adames who had been waiting to see if he'd be able to get about a unification bout there within the 160-pound division, right? And then didn't necessarily get that. Nothing with the top-rated contender in the WBC. So now he has this against Emma Williams. Says, are you going to the fights this weekend? Nah, I ain't gonna make it, bro. Not this joint in New York, bro. Can't. I mean, I might, but it's a very small chance I'm gonna make it. Had the thing there as far as like the application, but didn't get the nod. So that's why I'll be pretty much like in town for the fights. Well, I was trying to see if I could pull off a doubleheader, but nope. And they said like everything is kind of jammed up as far as like the the fight week stuff and all of that. I don't know if they're supposed to be having a press conference tomorrow. You got the thing with the weigh-in on Friday, all that stuff. Like, nah, I can't make it out there for that. Especially since, hey, we still, are dealing with all of the ice that's on the ground. We ain't had like any type of warm warm period during this week. since the storm came down over here on the East Coast. So if you think like like I wouldn't even try to go up there while that's going on, because shoot, I don't even know what's going on with the roads right now. You could still, like, I know some roads that are still within my area that ain't even been cleaned up. So I mean, who knows what's going on in those interstates or whatnot. So nah, I ain't gonna go make it up the for that. So I just be here watching all the fights. You know what I mean? You got all the fights, like I said here. What's going on with Ring 6? What else is going down? You got the whole thing, as I was mentioning there. You got the 154-pound battle royale going on January 31st. You got first Bakhram versus Josh Kelly, and then you got Xander Zayas versus Abbas Baraou. Bakhram there as the IBF champion, right? He's the IBF champion there at 154 pounds. This is going to be his first bout since the Tim Tszyu fight? That's crazy. This is his first bout since fighting Tim Tszyu. Okay. Now, here's the thing about it, y'all. Okay. Yeah. Shout out to Scooter, man. Hey, man. Hey, listen. Bro, I used to be at the lectures over at Howard University, when she was out there. So hey, shout out Dr. Wilson there real quick on that. But yeah, the IBF champion, Darren Bakhram had the win over Tim Tszyu, stopped him. IBF champion. Right? That was his first defense. All of 2025, he ain't even fight. Not one fighter that was out there, I guess, that was able to be in there to fight him. Folks saying that, hey, folks was ducking him. I'm saying he ain't got the promotional backing. He don't. Like, I'm sorry, but main events, you couldn't even secure a fight with him against Erickson Lubin, but Erickson Lubin was able to fight the WBC interim champion in Virgil Ortiz Jr. Like, how is it that you had Erickson Lubin fight in the IBF Eliminator bout, right, in Kissimmee, Florida, on ProBox earlier in the year, and he's supposed to be the mandatory challenger. He gets a late stoppage. He pretty much like calls out Bakhram, and y'all couldn't even get a deal done. So that's why he ended up facing Virgil Ortiz Jr. So now it's like, okay, you had the whole thing there. That's one mandatory challenger that's out the paint. Then you got another one. I think it was maybe another one before Josh Kelly. And then even with that, it ended up going to purse bid. And you see who won the purse bid. Matchroom. Who was hosting this thing? Matchroom. You know what I mean? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So with all of that that's going down with Bakhram Murtazaliev here against Josh Kelly, they're saying like Murtazaliev is like one of the big bullies, so to speak, there in the 154-pound division. I did see the face-off that he had there with Josh Kelly from earlier, and he almost in there looking like, oh man, what was it, my guy? He almost looking like Artur Beterbiev in that face-off or something. You know what I mean? Yeah, man. Yep, for sure, man. Hey, I gotta catch up with my guy Arlen too. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, salute, man, salute. But yeah, he out there looking like Artur Beterbiev. You feel me? And I just have to see, what's gonna be going down here with Josh Kelly, because he's there. Of course, he's gonna be the hometown guy and everything like that. But tailor the tape. They got thing there with Bakhram at 5'11", would have reached the 74, right? And they got Josh Kelly there with a reach of 72 and at 5'10". 17-1 with 9 wins by way of knockout. You would look at the tail of the tape that Josh Kelly will have to move around the ring a lot and try to get away from Bakhram Murtazaliev and kind of like pepper him and tag him and that type of thing. But hey, man, I don't know. Hey, Hey, you saying it's barbecue chicken alert? Hey, it might be barbecue chicken alert. It might be barbecue chicken alert because, whoo, boy, mm-mm-mm. Like it's gonna be something where Kelly's gonna have to like land a few combinations. But hey, who knows? We could have a performance, like what happened in Brooklyn. Subriel Matiz was looking like that guy that was the most avoided fighter at 140, and then he ends up losing by stoppage out there in Brooklyn. You know what I'm saying? So hey, who knows? Maybe we could have something like this happen here on January 31st over in England. Man, this is going to be in uh, Newcastle. This is going to be the second consecutive fight that Josh Kelly has had there over in Newcastle. He did have a first round knockout win up there against Flavius Bia. Yeah, I don't know who in the world this Flavius Bia is. Yeah, you know what I mean. I ain't even bothered with that. And then before that, he faced Ismail Davis. Now that was at Wembley Stadium. Now I was at Wembley Stadium for that event, but by the time I had got there, I had pretty much like missed that bout. You know what I'm saying? So we got to see like how Josh Kelly is going to be able to get through 12 rounds and everything like that, and if he could get this win. But outside of that, a lot of people are leaning towards Bakhram to get this win and to keep that IBF belt. He says, here in the deal is in place. If Bakhram wins, he fights Boots next. Well, the thing about it is, with Matchroom winning the bid, they pretty much like have the rights to Murtazalia for at least one more fight. He already had Josh Kelly under contract. They're under promotional contract, but with getting the rights to this fight, they have the option there, for Bakhram Murtazalia. And the thing about it is like, I mean, like I said, Bakhram is with main events. They, as my brother there, Joseph Heron says, like when you're a promotional company that has no TV dates, you're pretty much like a glorified manager. And at this point here, with main events, that's what you got. You got someone that's a glorified manager there for Bakhram Murtazalia because man, when you ain't fought since 2024 against Tim Tszyu, man, oh goodness, that's nasty work. That's nasty work. Now, actually, he should have been somebody that could have signed with a certain boxing promotion that I'll mention here pretty much at the tail end of this, right? Because yeah, they kind of like picking up those guys, a lot of those guys anyway. But here, at least with Bakhram, he gets this fight here against Josh Kelly. If he gets a win, then hey, he could be in the mix there against maybe a Boot Sentence, who is currently once again, interim WBA champion at 154 pounds. There we go with all of this interim stuff, man. Like, come on, what are we doing here, y'all? What are we doing? But that's something that that we're you're waiting out for. Latest scoop is they got him. That's the thing there that I pretty much seen like on the chat. It said they got him. According to TMZ or something like that, they said they got him in Miami. But I'm just saying, like, weeks long. Come on, y'all. What are we doing here? You feel me? Shout out my guy Scooter, man. He says, what Keyshawn's talking about Tank, yeah. But Tank was in the same position that Keys, and now, he came back after sitting out for 9 months and out butts and killed Pedraza as an underdog. Hey, and there was a lot, there was a big backstory to all of that. You know what I mean? I mean, it was probably about a few months ago, where Coach Calvin Ford was talking about that whole situation, what was going on, for that particular bout between Tank and Pedraza. So I don't know, we had to go back into the archives there through the Rise podcast for that conversation there. But yeah, but back to the thing there with Keyshawn. Like I said, it's going to be really interesting to see what he's going to do here in this bout against Jermaine Ortiz, because it's been, more than that. It's been 11 months. This will be almost a full year because it's going to be 2 weeks to February 14th, and that was the last bout that Keyshawn Davis has had. So we'll see how it goes there on that. But I was talking there in reference to this Bakhram and Josh Kelly, right? And then now we got over in Puerto Rico, Xander Zayas versus Abbas Baraou, right? Yeah. Yep. You got Xander Zayas, Abbas Baraou, WBO title on the line there, 154 pounds. You got Abbas Baraou that had his performance there, to win at the time the WBA interim title. I mean, come on, man. What are we doing here, man? Like, I mean, he was able to, out hustle and outwork Yoenis Tejas last August. Scored a knockdown in the 12th round and won by unanimous decision. You had Xander Zayas that was fighting for the vacant WBO title last July over at the theater at Madison Square Garden against Jorge Garcia Perez and got the decision win. So this will be the first defense for both of these fighters here. Of course, you got both of these guys that have been in the gyms together, had a few sparring sessions here and there. Now, this is going to be a really, really intriguing bout. I think the work rate of Bas Baraou is going to, keep him in this bout for some time. But I'm leaning towards Xander Zayas there for the win there. So for Xander Zayas, it's going to be really, really big for him to get this win to become a unified champion there at 154 pounds. Now, the only thing with the situation is like, man, remember we just recently found out that this fight card in itself is going to be on the Top Rank Classics channel, right? Like we still don't have any major broadcast affiliate or TV or network or whatever it is that's picking up fight cards for Top Rank. So if you have Xander Zayas here with this win and becoming a unified champion, then what would kind of like be next for him here in the future? Like you could have had, what is it? You could have him set up. They would have to have him set up for something because wouldn't you want to have Xander Zayas? He gets his win against Abbas Baraou as a unified super welterweight champion, being able to defend those titles in Madison Square Garden during Puerto Rican Parade weekend. That would be, that would kind of like usually be the plan there for something like a Top Rank. They would kind of set things up like that, But right now, given their situation, how are they going to, maneuver these fighters that they have here, especially here with Xander Zayas, because he could potentially be there with two titles, and with having two titles, they could pretty much say, hey, you know what? He could be the highest rated fighter at 154 pounds. So you mean you could have someone potentially be the highest rated fighter at 154 pounds and not necessarily have a good deal there as far as like a TV deal where he could headline a fight card or something like that. That would be like a Madison Square Garden or maybe something in Vegas or whatever it is. I don't know. But he does have to take care of business here against Abbas Baraou, who, like I said, has a very, very good work rate and doesn't necessarily, kind of like have mannerisms where he would, switch on and switch off, so to speak. But he would kind of like be in one calm demeanor throughout the whole fight. So I want to see how Xander Zayas kind of like deals with that there, with him having this particular home field advantage of sorts there as his bout is in Puerto Rico. There, what did I say? You got Zayas there at 22-0, 5'10" with a reach of 74, and you got Abbas Baraou there at 5'9" at 31 years old. But like I said, he is still there with that good work rate within the 154-pound division. Now they're saying like it's Xander Zayas as high as a 5-1 favorite in this bout against Baraou. So they feel like his skill level and elements that he's able to get this win over Baraou in this. It says that Turkey needs to invest his interest in Zayas if he wins Saturday. Um, okay. This is another reason why this weekend is really important, right? I mentioned the thing there with Xander Zayas and his potential. But the thing about it is, these guys over at Ring or whatever it is in Turkey and all of that have this fight card coming up in Madison Square Garden. Now, some people have those mentions about what's going on with tickets and all that type of stuff. Listen, the whole fight card, how it's presented, how it's made, how it flows is going to be very important because you want to have more bouts in that particular venue in the future this year. And you talk about something with Zayas, yeah, you will be able to have something like that. Like, hey, I'll give you an example, right? Xander Zayas wins this bout and becomes a unified champion. The potential matchup for him could be Ortiz, Virgil Ortiz. Now, Virgil Ortiz still has that little ordeal with Golden Boy has to, kind of like complete. But if he's able to have all of that cleared out and whatever it is, then you could potentially have something like that going down in June for those unified titles. That would be a huge, huge event. I would feel like it would be a huge event there in New York City if you do have Xander Zayas versus Virgil Ortiz Jr. Over in Madison Square Garden this summer. But like I said, Xander has to take care of business, and we got to see what goes down with the numbers here in Madison Square Garden because what I heard from the main event, the purses for Shakur Stevenson and Teofimo Lopez, they are up to upwards of $8 or $9 million per fighter. That's some bread. That's some bread. And that's a serious step up from what both of those fighters had been getting, while they have been under, Top Rank or Matchroom or whatever it is. But, Shakur Stevenson has been involved in a few of these, either Ring Magazine or Riyadh season events, particularly last year, of course, with February 22nd. And then that Ring 4 that wasn't Ring 4, that was Ring 3 that was in Queens, New York. So, we got to see how that sorts itself out. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's like a lot of what I had going down in reference to that particular fight there at 154. Like I said, it's going to be on Top Rank Classics. That fight card is going to be on Top Rank Classics. You will have a number of fighters that you are used to seeing on Top Rank when it was on ESPN. You'll see them on this thing. You're gonna have Giovanni Santillan in this fight card. You're gonna have Rohan Polanco on this fight card. You're gonna have Juanma Lopez de Jesus on this fight card. You're also gonna have Yuri Cedeno against Atundi William on this fight card, and that's gonna be interesting because you did see Yuri Cedeno in the fight card at Scope Arena in Norfolk on the same card that Atundi William fought Troy Isley, right? So Atundi William had that 10 rounds against Troy Isley, and now he's getting this other opportunity here against the undefeated fighter there, Yuri Cedeno. So we got to see how that goes. He says that Xander Zayas and Boots Ennis both beat Virgil Ortiz. Hey, you can see that, I've kind of like not been real sold on Virgil Ortiz. Ever since he was there at welterweight, they had him up to a certain point as far as like being a top contender in welterweight. Didn't necessarily get a world title shot there. He was slated to face Iamana Stanionis. That bout got delayed, and then overall canceled. Then he ends up moving to 154. Has those few bouts, and then fought for the WBC interim belt. Got the decision there, and Is what it is. I mean, we had his performances last year. Like I said with the Erickson Lubin. You had the Israel Madrimov fight as well. So now it's going to be like, okay, what's going to be next for him? I've kind of mentioned the whole thing about what's going down with him and Golden Boy, and they say that they're looking to go to trial. So I don't know. We have to have an update on that, because if that whole lawsuit thing goes to trial, good luck for Virgil Ortiz if they don't get a settlement thing done by then, because you would have to schedule the trial, make sure everyone's there for the date, all that type of stuff, and then you got to go through all the stuff, the jury, and it's like I would have been. It would have been better off if they would have tried to figure out a settlement, or just say, "Hey, look, you know what? And part of our agreement, we had the whole thing where you got to pull up a minimum of 2 fights per calendar year or whatever it is. You know what? He's already had his one fight against Erickson Lubin. Just try to set up another fight, and then after that fight, just wash your hands over the whole thing. You know what I mean? So Bo Ryder says he thinks that Xander is the weakest link at 154 pounds. Okay, so you got like I said, you got Xander Zayas, you got Abbas Baraou, you got Bakhram Zalev, you got Josh Kelly that's fighting, you got Boots Ennis, you got Virgil Ortiz, you got Sebastian Fendora. Um, who else would you put in that? And I'm talking about like fighters that are, like actually in the mix. You know what I'm saying? So if I like for example, if I like pulled up a top 5 or a top 10 within 154, like who would you like have Xander Zayas be rated at or above? You know what I'm saying? And I go to the whole thing there with the 154, I go to the Transnational Boxing Rankings Board. I don't necessarily go to the ring on that, because there's like a couple of ratings on there that I'm like, nah, you gotta be kidding me with that. All right, so you should see it right there. You got Sebastian Fendora, they got at number 1, Virgil Ortiz at number 2, Brandon Adams at number 3, Boachuk at number 4. I don't know, man. Maybe we might have to reconsider this thing here with the Transnational Boxing Records Board, because you got Brandon Adams, Suri Boachuk, Israel Madrimov, Jesus Ramos, Xander Zayas, Abbas Baraou, Boots Ennis, and Pavel Sutherland. Yo, yeah, hey, yo. Oh man, this is crazy, yo. I don't know, man. This might be nasty work too. This might be nasty work, because, yo, you got two world you got 2 world champions and an interim champion that ain't even in the top 5. None of them are in the top 5. You got Boachuk that's in there. Wait a minute, didn't Boachuk lose to Brandon Adams, right? Okay. You got Israel Madrimov that, yeah, he's been a former world champion. He got the loss to Terrence Crawford, and he got the loss to Virgil Ortiz Jr. But, yo, I don't know, man. I mean, Boots, yeah, he's only had one fight at 154. I get it. But Xander Zayas is a full-fledged world champion. Bas Baraou was elevated to world champion. Y'all gotta give him more credit than this. Come on, y'all. What are we doing here? Oh man, this is nasty work. This is nasty work. And Four Quarter says Thurman about to crash the party. Hey, listen. I don't know if they kind of like announced it yet or whatever it is, but we've been waiting to see if they're gonna have Sebastian Fendora versus Keith Thurman. Maybe it'll be on March 21st. Maybe it'll be on March 28th. I don't know. I'm like hoping it'll be like March 21st. Because it'd be like, well, not too far removed from like my birthday, but I would want to see about going out to something there. Like I said, to celebrate or something like that. So this March 21st over in Vegas, hey, you know what? It's on. You know what I'm saying? March 28th wouldn't be bad either, but that that would kind of like be something if they do have it for March 21st there. But yeah, that's the that's the freaking the ratings there for TBRB. That's crazy for 154. Man, oh goodness. Oh man. But that kind of like shows you like what's out there within a 154-pound division, right? Shout out to everyone that's listening live here for the midweek report. We got still like a lot that I wanted to talk about here because the thing that I am going to be in attendance for is the ProBox TV events there in Hanover, Maryland, the Maryland Live Casino. Okay. We got a number of fighters that'll be from the DC area that are going to be part of this fight card. Okay. What's going to see here if I could share this screen here real quick so we'll be able to see it. You got there with the Brian Flores versus Starlin Castillo. That's going to be there in the super lightweight division. That's supposed to be the headlining bout. But you also have Suleiman Sagawa, who's been a contender there at the featherweight division, had that close fight against Bruce Carrington in New York City some time back. He's going to be going up against Rene Galvan. That is the co-feature bout there, and that kind of like has him, in the mix for the featherweight titles there. So you got that. That's going to be on this card, and a number of fighters within the area that are going to be on this card. You got Francois Scarborough Jr. on this. He's been a pro box fighter since last year. Number of fights there under pro box going up against Brandon Valdez. They got short dog Jordan White that's going to be on this thing here against Willie Shaw. I think that was like added on to this here recently. You got Elijah Flores versus Tanjay Teasley there in the welterweight division. They talk about pro boxing having these matchups that are like 50-50 matchups. To me, that's going to be the one right there that, fight fans will kind of like look to there on Friday night. You got, of course, those in the area, Trayvon Marshall, Benjamin Johnson, Irvin Fuller III, Jordan Roach, Jeff Yu, Dave Whitmire, and Dwayne Holmes Jr. Okay? Like, pretty much like all of those guys within the area had like the workout over in No Excuse Gym last Thursday. You know what I'm saying? So here's the thing that I'm looking forward to. You got the fighters there from No Excuse Promotions and Jordan Roach and Ben Johnson. You got Dave Whitmire, Dwayne Holmes Jr., and Trayvon Marshall that's on there, with Coach Andrew Council, right? And, of course, you got Francois Scarborough Jr. and Irvin Fuller III that's there from Hillcrest Boxing Gym, right? And we got to see here what's up with Jordan White in his first bout since, he had the loss there against, what was it? Man, because he had the bout there that was on ProBox, right? And that was the one that was like the headlining bout there against Rene Tejas. So, he's getting back into the mix there against, Willie Shaw after his loss to Rene Tejas. And this is going to be in the lightweight division. Now, remember, his bout against Rene Tejas was actually his first bout within the lightweight division. He was pretty much like contending there at super featherweight before going up to lightweight against Rene Tejas. Now, I gotta see. This is why I gotta be focused on this one because I just feel like just being straight up, going to lightweight and having your first bout against someone like Rene Tejas, that I ain't necessarily 100% behind that. So you know what I mean. So that's the thing about it. This guy says be the world champ and never defended the world title. Xander fought a former world champion, though. I mean, he at least Xander says fought a former world champion there. You know what I mean? In Patrick Teixeira, but yeah, as far as like an actual world champion, nah, not until what's going on January 31st. But yeah, for here January 30th. Y'all see this here on ProBox. We will have the weigh-in schedule for tomorrow over at Maryland Live. So we're gonna get like the numbers for all of these fighters. We got three belts there that's gonna be part of this. Like I said, Suleiman Sagawa is a fan favorite here within the DC area. So is Francois Scarborough Jr. Jordan White, short dog, he has a following there. You know what I'm saying? A number of these guys here, like I said, through No Excuse, they got a following too. So, we gotta see what the full schedule is. I want to see if I could, get when ProBox will start their stream, right? Because the fights in itself, they start at like 5 p.m. Eastern time, right? They start at 5 p.m. Eastern time. It said doors open at like 3:30. I'm like, hey man, I'm sorry, man. Or we could get there around 3:30. I'm like, man, I don't even know if I'm gonna be out there for those 3:30. I'll probably like hang out at the casino or something, you know what I'm saying? But as far as like in the actual venue, nah. So all right. So they got it where it is slated to be starting at 5:30 p.m. on ProBox TV. So y'all be able to start watching what's going on at Maryland Live at 5:30 on ProBox TV. So, but you see there the whole fight card in reference to all of this. So you kind of like see what's going down in reference to that. So, number of fights is supposed to be what, 12 fights? Yeah, man, 12. But we have a number of them that are scheduled for 6 rounds. Not even any 4 rounds bouts. Damn. All right. So yeah, like I said, we gonna have one. We gonna have about, what is that? 7? Yeah, 7 bouts that are scheduled for 6 rounds. One bout scheduled for 8 rounds there, in that Elijah Flores versus Tanjay Teasley, and then the 4 bouts scheduled for 10 rounds there in this whole fight card. Is brought to you by No Excuse Promotions there, Lamont Roach Sr. He's had a number of those fight cards there with No Excuse Promotions there with ProBox ever since, last year or whatnot. So, but then also, before that, he had the thing there with Lamont Roach Jr. defending that WBA super featherweight title at Care First Arena in Washington, D.C. So that kind of like shows like how much has been going on that front. But looking forward to that there for ProBox TV. All right. Now we had a recent announcement here this morning over in the UK. You're gonna have the Gypsy King Tyson Fury going up against Arslanbek Makhmudov on April 11th, and it's going to be broadcast live on Netflix. And they said it'll be the first live sports or live event of sorts there in the UK for Netflix. That's big. Turkey I Love Seek was saying that, hey, this is going to be one of those big events there for what's going down over in the UK. I don't know if it's going to be in Wembley Stadium or Tottenham Hotspur Stadium or whatever it is, but looking like there's going to be something big. I'm looking forward to it to see what happens here. You got Tyson Fury that's coming back, of course. He had his 2 bouts against Alexander Usyk in 2024. Didn't fight in 2025. So this is going to be his first bout since those 2 fights against Alexander Usyk. Arslanbek Makhmudov, is there as the contender. He had his fight against Dave Allen some time back. So it looks like he's going to try to, upset the apple cart there with Tyson Fury, who, has said, listen, it's a Gypsy King and I'm back. I'm back. You dossers, or whatever he wants to say, right? But for Arslanbek Makhmudov, we had his win over Dave Allen. He's had the 2 losses there with against Agit Kavial and against Guido Vianello. But he's had a couple of wins since then. He's of course based over in Montreal. Had a majority of his bouts in Canada. So now we're gonna see if he's gonna get another bout here in the UK, because when he beat Dave Allen, that was over in Sheffield. So we got to see how that fight thing turns out and stuff like that. So that's gonna be something. I might have a conversation of sorts there with Makhmudov here pretty soon. Looking see if I'll be able to secure that. That's going to be big. There. Shout out to those within the promotional company that deal with Arslanbek Makhmudov, because I'm going to see if I have a conversation with him very soon. Okay, so we do have that, but that is like a lot of news, a lot of fights that's coming up, a lot of things for y'all to look forward to. I did, of course, see the whole thing with the news as far as like what's going on outside the ring. I'm not even going to, expound on that because it really shouldn't be. So that's what I have here. What is it going towards 9 p.m. Eastern time? Uh, and just big thanks for everyone that's here listening live. I do have another interview that I'm going to be posting up here pretty soon. Like I said, I had something there with Jermaine Ortiz. I did post something there with Irvin Fuller III, who is going to be on that ProBox card here on Friday. But I'm going to have another interview here posted up for y'all to look forward to on the YouTube channel, so y'all be able to look out for that there. But if y'all haven't done so already, hit the like button, hit the share button. We got a number of things for y'all to look forward to here on this front. And I will catch y'all later, folks. Till next time, y'all. Peace out.